It's time that the UFC stops messing around and actually makes a UFC Africa card, not a themed card in Las Vegas like the UFC does for Mexican Independence Day, but a real UFC Africa card on African soil. Let's stop messing around. Let's make this. You had an opportunity when you had three champions in Francis Ngannou, Kamaru Usman, and Israel Adesanya. You had a golden opportunity and you missed out. It's time to make this fucking card. Okay? Let's stop messing around. And I fear that the UFC is going, like, it honestly makes me want to pull my hair out. That's how pissed off I get thinking about this golden opportunity that the UFC is most likely going to pass up on. Why? Because they are lazy, okay? And there's no argument to be made, oh, they might lose a little bit of money. The UFC puts on shit pay-per-views all the time by creating shitty cards that could have been 10 times better and easily 10 times better. That to me means losing money. If I'm the UFC, I'm willing to lose a little bit of money in order to make history, to make a fight between Dricus du Plessis, the newly crowned South African champion, defend in South Africa at a massive rugby stadium against former African champion Israel Adesanya. Stop fucking around. Sometimes you got to lose a little bit of money to make some in the future. Invest in Africa. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to build the best UFC Africa card known to man, the best one that's ever been created on MMA YouTube. But because I know that the UFC is going to procrastinate on UFC Africa, and we're probably not going to see it for the next 10 years, and they're totally going to fumble the opportunity of having Dricus du Plessis main event in South Africa, or putting Izzy in Nigeria, and putting Usman in Nigeria. What we're most likely going to get is this fight on International Fight Week in Las Vegas, which is to be expected. And because of that, I'll make a realistic Las Vegas Izzy versus DDP card after the Africa card. But that's what I'm going to do in this video. I'm going to create two excellent cards. The first one that we're going to get into is my UFC Africa card. Welcome to UFC 302. We are going to have this event take place in South Africa at the Ellis Park Stadium, home of the Springboks. And the first fight that I'm going to discuss is going to be a prelim matchup. This is the only prelim I'm going to bring up. It's not necessarily big enough to make the main card, but it's absolutely necessary that we see this guy be on this card in general, and that is no other than the South African himself, Cameron Saaiman, who does have a fight coming up soon against Peyton Talbot, but if he wins, and I do expect him to get that win, I want to see him fight Raoni Barcelos. That's just a name that is interesting. That's a bump up in competition. It's a dangerous matchup, but we don't have to baby Cameron Saaiman, okay? This would be his like 6th or 5th fight in the UFC. Even if it's a bit too much right now, it's still going to be a good lesson learned. It's going to get him up in the morning. Not that he needs any help with that. I mean, Cameron Saaiman's still young and hungry, but it's interesting, it's dangerous, it's a fun matchup, and Raoni Barcelos, it's not like Jose Aldo or Edson Barboza, okay? I know he's dangerous, but he's not necessarily the best thing since sliced bread. It's not the most dangerous matchup. It's a fun battle, and we got to have Cameron Saaiman on this card, okay? He's from South Africa. He's a training partner of du Plessis. It makes perfect sense. So let's get on to the first fight on this main card. I'm talking about Anthony Smith. That's right. Smith, you're going to Africa, and you're fighting Kennedy Nzechukwu, who just got knocked out in his last fight against Dustin Jacoby. For Anthony Smith, this is a tough matchup, but it's an easier matchup, okay? And Smith kind of could afford fighting someone that's a little bit chinny. Either way, it's a dangerous matchup for both. Kennedy has some really good solid leg kicks that could give Smith issues. He's well-rounded too. Anthony Smith still got that toughness. We'll see how his chin is going to hold up after the Khalil Roundtree fight. But either way, it's a competitive matchup. Both of these guys go to war. And I want to see this open up the main card on UFC Africa. Kennedy, of course, is from Nigeria, so it would make perfect sense to see him on this card. Let's get on to the second fight on the main card. The finesser himself, Themba Gorimbo, representing Zimbabwe. And he's going to be fighting Santiago Ponzinibbio. And I just think that this is the absolute perfect matchup for Themba if you are trying to build him up, if you're trying to get him some more exposure. Sure, you could match him up with someone like Buckley or maybe someone like Renat Fakhretdinov or Mike Mallet. But in my opinion, going from Pete Rodriguez to Santiago is still a good bump up. Santiago's crafty. He has a lot of experience, but he's also on the downsides trajectory of his career. It's like a good stepping stone. It's a winnable fight. You want Themba to get the win. You really want him to get the win in Africa, representing Zimbabwe. And I honestly think that this is a winnable fight for him, right? Santiago doesn't have the best chin. Themba's, we know now, has some serious power in his hands. He's well-rounded. And if he wins this, then that gives him an opportunity to fight a ranked opponent next, because usually if you beat Santiago Ponzinibbio, you're fighting a ranked opponent next. For Themba, we don't need him to fight through the fucking meat grinder. Okay, let's get him some winnable fights. Let's see what he can do. Let's try to build him up as a star. Of course, we know he has that really inspirational story, and it would just be cool to see him on this main card as well. I think he could blow up in popularity with a win here. Let's get on to the next one. Manel Kape is back, and he's going to be fighting Muhammad Mokaev, who I predict will beat Alex Perez in the third round this upcoming weekend by submission. Perfect matchup, okay? We know Manel Kape is going to be representing Angola. Muhammad Mokaev, of course, we know that Muhammad is going to be on the verge of a title shot. Manel Kape, listen, I know that he pulled out of his last fight because he missed weight. And, well, he didn't actually pull out. His opponent, I think, refused to fight him. But he missed weight by a bunch of pounds, and that's pathetic. And yes, you could make the argument that he doesn't deserve a number one contenders fight. But the only alternative to that is that we see another rematch, trilogy, quadrilogy in a flyweight title fight. We need new contenders. We need fresh matchups. Mokaev and Manel Kape may be the answer. I know I just fucking remembered Manel Kape has literally fought Pantoja. So that's a little bit annoying. But a rematch in the flyweight division is just as good as a new fight. Okay, so let's make this happen. We need Manel Kape on this card. And let's get on to the next one. Co-main event, Robert Whittaker versus Kamaru Usman. This is one of my dream fights. Now, I think that this should be a number one contenders fight. Whoever wins this should fight for the belt. And you may ask yourself, what do you mean? Usman's coming off of a loss. Dude, he literally took 2 rounds out of 3 to Khamzat Chimaev. If you don't believe that, rewatch the fight and stop coping. Kamaru Usman won the second round. He won the third round. He's fighting in an easier division if he moves up. The alternative to this is that we never see a really fun matchup between two legends in Whittaker and Usman. It's a fascinating stylistic matchup. Is Usman going to be able to take down Robert Whittaker? If he can't, how is he going to do on the feet? Is Whittaker going to struggle with the welterweight skill and the jab of Kamaru? Most importantly, if Usman stays at welterweight, I just don't understand the point. What's he going to do? Fight Shavkat Rakhmonov? Most likely lose. He's going to be like 37 years old. Shavkat's young. He's hungry. We know how those fights usually work. Shavkat probably beats him. And if Usman were to win that, what's his reward? Fighting Leon Edwards, the guy that schooled him in their last fight? Oh, wow. Usman's going to have such a great chance to win back the belt against Leon, the guy that's beat him 2 times in a row. It's over for Usman at 170. No more cutting weight. Move up a weight class. Take a fun, fan-friendly matchup against Robert Whittaker. If you win this one, the least the UFC can do to repay him for saving UFC 294 and fighting Khamzat Chimaev and arguably, again, winning. If you're not going to call that first round a 10-8, Usman should have won that fight. The way you repay him is by giving him a chance to fight for the belt next. And same thing for Whittaker. Whittaker just got a win over Paulo Costa. I think he needs one more. And this would be a really good fight to make. It'd be awesome. And if Whittaker wins, he can get a title shot. And of course, the main event, Adesanya versus Dricus du Plessis. I don't really need to say a lot about this one. A lot of you guys want to see Strickland fight for the belt again, but this is the fight that the UFC is looking to make. And in my opinion, I want to see this fight before we lose that opportunity forever, because the issue with not making this one now is that we may never see Adesanya versus DDP. For example, if Strickland were to fight DDP and beat him, then we're not going to see Izzy versus DDP because Izzy's not going to fight DDP in a number one contenders fight. So we got to see this fight. Strickland, in my opinion, should still be reserved for a title shot in the future against one of the winners. You know what I mean? And I know I just said that Whittaker and Usman, the winner of that, should fight for the title. okay, you can have 2 reserved guys for the title as well. And now, because this is probably not going to happen, guys, as sad as it is, the UFC is probably never going to make UFC Africa, while Izzy and DDP are still contending for championship belts. It's probably not going to happen. Let's get to the realistic UFC International Fight Week card, which is still going to be awesome if the UFC doesn't fumble on this one. So I'll show you guys my card. Starting with the first fight, Alexander Volkanovski versus the Tooth Fairy. I want to see Volk get a nice, easy layup matchup, a super pillow-handed fighter, and I think that this would make sense. I think Volkanovski, with a win over the Tooth Fairy, could possibly go higher up on the GOAT list. I'm just joking, guys. Let's actually get to the real first matchup, which is Umar Nurmagomedov versus Jonathan Martinez. 2 of the best kickers in the entire sport, and I'm assuming that Umar is going to get the job done this weekend at the Apex, but I don't want to see him fight for a number 1 contenders matchup, all right? Corey Sandhagen and Merab deserve a title shot. Both of those guys are in line. Let's not create another logjam. Let's not give Umar a chance to fight Corey when he pulled out of the last one, and that was literally like a gift from the UFC. Hey, hey, Umar, we're going to give you the opportunity of a lifetime. If you win this, you get a title shot. He fucking pulled out. So, sorry, you're not getting a number 1 contenders fight. Work your way up. But this is a good bump up in competition. It's a top 10 guy. I think that Jonathan Martinez is one of the most dangerous fighters for Umar Nurmagomedov because his leg kicks are so nasty. He is tied all time for the most leg kick TKOs in UFC history, and he's still in his 20s. He's super young. He's probably going to get more of them. And Umar, as I said, a phenomenal kicker as well. Jonathan Martinez can destroy his legs and make Umar a lot less effective on the feet. And we also saw Jonathan Martinez show some good instincts in the grappling against Said Nurmagomedov. So it's just a really good matchup, dangerous fight on the feet for Umar, a guy that could slow him down, a guy that could potentially just take his base out from underneath him. And Umar, of course, has the threat of the takedown. 2 guys at the start of their prime going at it. We need more of these fights. I don't want to see Umar fight like an older Pedro Munoz. Or I don't want to see Jonathan Martinez fight like, Cody Garbrandt or some shit next if Cody Garbrandt beats Figgy. Let's have both of these young guys fight each other. And let's get on to the second fight on the main card. Rafael Fiziev makes his return against Jalen Turner, okay? Now, Turner lost to Dan Hooker, and that was his gateway into like the top 7, but he had to bounce back with a win over Bobby Green. Bobby Green, I don't think, is ranked right now. So this, again, is an opportunity for Jalen Turner to get into that top 7. And for Fiziev, he was basically in that top 7, right? He had a razor-close fight with Justin Gaethje. He did lose. I think that he lost, clearly, but it was close. It was competitive, at least. And his last loss is basically something we can brush off. It's nothing. It's a little fluke. So this is a really fun matchup. Rafael Fiziev, one of the best strikers in the lightweight division. Jalen Turner, one of the best strikers in the lightweight division. I think Jalen Turner knocks Fiziev out. I think he finishes him. I think that Fiziev's power is overrated, but at the same time, a lot of people would suggest that Rafael Fiziev is going to shit on Jalen Turner and that Jalen Turner got exposed and ain't all that good. Either way, it's a fun matchup. We'll really see who is truly the best outside of the top 5 striker in this weight class. Let's make it happen. Fireworks matchup. And let's get on to the next one. Edson Barboza versus Josh Emmett. As a fan of Edson, who's incredibly crafty, this is like the perfect crafty versus pure physicality matchup you could possibly make in the featherweight division. Emmett, of course, we call him Big Meaty Hooks on this channel because, the only thing he's really got is a big, meaty overhand or a hook. But Edson's not as durable as he was in the past. Of course, his fight IQ, his decision-making is excellent. His kicks can be an issue for Josh Emmett. We've seen Emmett struggle with guys like Yair, who destroyed him to the body. Edson has phenomenal body kicks. I think he can rip up Emmett, but it's a dangerous fight. That would be 2 phenomenal striking battles back-to-back. And for the co-main event, Sean Strickland versus Robert Whittaker. Whoever wins this gets a title fight. Now, I know that on my Africa card, I did Whittaker versus Usman because I just needed Usman to be on that card. And I also still want Usman to move up a weight class. If this fight gets made, Usman can still fight maybe like Brendan Allen or Vettori, whoever wins that matchup. And Whoever wins between Whittaker and Strickland will fight for the belt. There's already a little bit of a built-in beef. Strickland has talked some shit about Robert Whittaker's style. He says that the fans glaze him too much and that the only thing he has is a karate blitz and a high kick setup, and that's basically it. Whittaker doesn't like that. Of course, Whittaker is going to want to go in there and prove himself. And I honestly think that this is a tough matchup for Strickland too, because let's not act like Strickland has some heavy hands. Sure, he may be hard to hit, but the guys that usually give Whittaker issues are people with some serious knockout power that have a lot of physicality. Sure, you could say that Strickland can smother Whittaker with the boxing, but Whittaker's also pretty fucking fast, and that's like one of his best attributes. And he's got really good hands. He's slick, he's fast. His kicks are going to be unpredictable. He can wrestle a little bit too. And it's just a fun matchup that we all want to see as fans. It would suck to never see these guys fight each other when they're two of the best middleweights in the world. And as I said, the winner gets a title fight against the winner of Izzy versus DDP for the main event on UFC 303 in Las Vegas. This would be my Vegas card. Another stacked card. I think I'm one of the best matchmakers on the planet, and I think that the UFC needs to hire someone like me because these are the fights that fans want. They're all fun. They're all competitive stylistically. They're really entertaining. They're going to be high-paced. They're going to be violent. All right? And, you know, they make sense as well as far as the rankings go. So let me know what you guys think about my Africa card. Let me know what you guys think about my International Fight Week Las Vegas card. Unfortunately, we're probably not going to see UFC Africa. The UFC is totally going to fumble it. I mean, if they fumbled 3 African champions fighting in UFC Africa, then they're probably going to fumble DDP and Izzy being in Africa too. And if Izzy beats DDP, how many times have we seen Izzy defend on US soil or in Australia? What makes you think they're going to bring Izzy to Africa next, okay? I hope that they go to Africa, even if it means losing a little bit of money, which may be necessary to grow the sport over there and to do something that's basically making history. Anyway, hope you guys enjoyed the video. Until next time.